yield to the ranking member for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to the witnesses. Dr. Zenz, I'd like to start our discussion with the growth of these mass concentration camps of Uyghurs. These so-called, quote-unquote, vocational education and retraining centers in Xinjiang started in 2014 and expanded dramatically in 2017. First, I just want to start with a graphic of a parcel of land in Xinjiang in 2015. As you can tell, it's an empty piece of land. But let's see what happened to this very tract of land. In 2017, CCP told the police to, quote, round up everyone who should be rounded up, close quote. And 1 year later, in 2018, a new internment camp was constructed on this previously empty site. Correct, Dr. Zenz?
Yes, that is. Yes, along with many others. This particular facility is a detention center, which are extensively used for extrajudicial re-education, besides the so-called vocational skills training education centers, which were also erected from 2017.
Right. Let me show you a picture of some satellite imagery from 2020 of the same piece of land. Over 2 years, we see an enormous growth of this same camp, multiplying in size manifold. Interestingly, in 2019, Chinese officials in Xinjiang stated that the forced internment centers were closed and that the detainees had all, quote unquote, graduated. Dr. Zenz, do these camps look closed to you?
The Chinese government was referring to the closure of so-called vocational skills education and training centers, which are lower security facilities, such as the one in Kona Share, where we have evidence from the Xinjiang police files. All of these, the lower security camps were run just like detention centers as prisons, and we have testimony from them. What we see is in 2019 a desecuritization of a number of the lower security vocational centers. That's how they're called, but they are re-education camps. And a drastic, as you correctly point out here, a significant expansion of higher security facilities. We have a trend, and we have some witness accounts of Uyghurs being shifted from the re-education facilities both into forced labor and into higher security prison. And we can assume that hundreds of thousands have been shifted into these facilities, which have been dramatically expanding.
Let me turn your attention to another very disturbing topic. In your 2020 report on the CCP's campaign to suppress Uyghur birth rates in Xinjiang, you included this chart, which shows sterilizations for every 100,000 people in Xinjiang compared to the nation as a whole. And what you can see in this chart, you can see it up there as well, but essentially the sterilization rate for Xinjiang region is much lower from 2010 to 2015 compared to what it is for the nation from 2010 to 2015. But then in 2016, the one-child policy ends, the sterilization rate goes down for the nation and it explodes for Xinjiang region. Now, my question to you is this. Dr. Zenz, when a government institutes a massive coerced forced sterilization program like this, it's not reflective of a government trying to provide vocational training or career training to this population, is it?
No, it's not. And in fact, vocational training is just a euphemism.
It's a sign that this government, the CCP, no longer wants these people or their children to exist. Isn't that right?
The intent behind mass sterilization is to reduce Uyghur birth rates, to dilute the Uyghur population, which is seen as a national security threat. Concentrated Uyghur populations are considered a national security threat.
And this is ending Uyghur births, in some sense, fits the definition of a genocide, right?
Yes, the prevention of births is one of the articles of the Genocide Convention from 1948.
Mr. Turkle, thank you. Mr. Turkle, this morning the CEO of TikTok, Mr. Chu, was questioned at a hearing before Congress. And at that time, actually, my colleague, Dr. Dunn, cited reports of basically TikTok data being used to surveil Forbes journalists. And Mr. Chu said this was not spying on those journalists. Can you please tell us your opinion about what he said?
Well, that's what they do. When you look at their practices, starting from ByteDance. ByteDance has a strategic partnership with Chinese Ministry of Public Security. That's part of their business conduct. When you look at the way that they built this camp system, initially they relied on something called Integrated Joint Operating Platform. That joint operating platform used the data from the WeChat and Douyin to build
Douyin is the
Chinese
equivalent
version of the TikTok. Yes.
TikTok.
So that's, a lot of Uyghur people to this day don't even know why they're in the camp, why their loved ones in the camp. Because of this platform, tracing or part of the Chinese government. Even today, there are representatives in Washington engaging in genocide denial. If you listen to the interview with the top lobbyist for the company last year with Jake Tapper on CNN, he could not even acknowledge that there's a genocide in China. That speaks the volume.
The gentleman's time has expired. Mr. Whitman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to thank our witnesses for joining us today. The past two